Hi, this is Diana Shad with the Family Business Alliance. Joining me is Bill Muir, president of Grand Rapids Label Company. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Good. Well, I thought we would start by you maybe telling me a little bit about Grand Rapids Label and the products that you provide.
Sure. So we're a 135-year-old family business, obviously. Fourth generation, so I represent the fourth generation to run the business. Currently getting the fifth generation into the business. We make labels for difficult applications is what we do. Pressure-sensitive labels, durable labels is really what our business is. With the automotive industry, the appliance industry, basically if you want a label that's going to last a long, long time, or as we say, last longer than the product it's applied to, that's what we do.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about the history. You said what year you were founded in?
1884 is when we were officially incorporated.
Okay.
So that's where we go. So this year is 135 years, and so we tend to go off of that. We can trace the history back farther. We've been located in Grand Rapids that entire time. So started out downtown Grand Rapids. We were just a small print shop. In fact, if you go to the Public Museum in the 1900 streetscape, that's very much what our print shop was like.
Oh, okay.
In fact, some of the equipment that's there was stuff that was donated from our shop years ago.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's great.
So we did books, posters, train schedules. In fact, we have a replica of a poster that was in the Library of Congress that's of a poster for Harry Houdini coming to Grand Rapids, show way back when that we printed back in the 1890s.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can go back a little bit farther, but we really kind of say it's 1884, so 135 years.
So obviously you've changed a lot over that time.
Yeah.
Let's look even at the last 50 years with the advent of technology and different things that have happened. How have you changed both size-wise and technology-wise over the last 50 years?
As we started doing the schedules and the train, we started in the early 1900s doing labels, in a sense, but they were glue-applied labels or they were heat seal labels for the insurance industry, for the or for the furniture industry that was thriving in Grand Rapids. And we then transitioned in the 1950s, so about 65 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, into pressure-sensitive labels. And so that was a big technological change within our industry where you could actually kind of the peel and stick labels. That's when that whole thing was invented. So we started getting into that business back then and have been doing labels ever since. Now, where I talk about the durable labels, what we focus on and what's been different for us is we look at it and we say that anybody can print the top side of the label and make it look nice. We focus on the adhesive and the construction. So that's where the technology comes in. We do things that are different within the industry that we can focus on the adhesive, focus on the underside. And so there's a lot of technological advances that we've made, a lot of patents that we've held over the years for different constructions, different things that we've been able to do. So that's where that's happened. Now, of course, in our industry in the last 30 years, we've started to see some real advancements where the industry is going from being more of an art form, which is what it's been over the years. It's now much more of a science.
Okay.
So the press technology is a lot different. The advent of servos on the presses, the advent of digital printing. We've been in digital printing for over 20 years now. We were, in fact, we were the second company in North America to get into digital printing, which is very much more of a science than it is an art. So that's a big thing that we've done from the printing perspective. Then the same thing on the adhesive side. We're much more in the development and formulation of adhesives for specific applications.
Now, you mentioned automotive. Are you doing international business, or is most of your work here in the U.S.?
We do both.
Okay.
The nature of our product is that most people will do things locally or closer to where they are. The interesting thing for us, over 75% of our business is actually done outside of the state of Michigan.
Oh.
And with that, we actually, for certain customers, we're shipping worldwide for them.
Okay.
So as we're working with different clients in different areas, we have one automotive manufacturer in particular we're shipping to over 50 locations: China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all the different countries that are all over the place, as well as South America, North America, every continent, and everything else.
Do you get to travel there?
No.
Okay. Do you want to travel
They're
there?
not. It'd be fun, but there's not. It isn't exactly enough that we're worried about. We're talking about a couple of different automotive, suppliers or automotive manufacturing locations over there. So it's not like we're shipping a major portion of our business. About 10% of what we ship is going internationally.
Okay.
So it's a small portion, but it's kind of fun to be able to say.
But
too.
most of the printing is done here in Grand Rapids? Or
All the printing is done
all
here
the printing
in
is
Grand
done here in Grand
Rapids.
Rapids,
Yep.
at that location.
One location in Grand Rapids, and we've been, like I said, we've been in Grand Rapids our entire existence. So we do all of the printing here and ship it.
And
all
how
over
many
the place.
employees?
About 80 employees.
Okay. And has that stayed pretty consistent over time, or has there been a
It's
lot of
up
growth?
and ups and downs.
Okay.
Yeah, like everybody else during the downturn in 08 and 09, we had to scale back the organization, and we've become much more lean as we've gone forward. So we were down from our high of 110 employees back in the early 2000s, and we dropped down to about 70 employees, and we've actually doubled our size since the downturn, and have only added about 10 employees.
Okay.
So we've become much more efficient in how we're operating.
Right.
So,
Well, good. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit because you come from an interesting family history. And from what I understand, you grew up with 3 family businesses: Grand Rapids Label, Paragon D&E, and Cascade Engineering. Could you just tell us a brief history about these companies and how they fit into your family?
well, there's actually another family business in there as well.
Okay.
So Crosby and Henry Insurance, I can't leave that one out.
Okay.
Which is a 150-plus-year-old family insurance industry. So it'd be easier if this was a video and we had a whiteboard and we could kind of diagram the whole thing out. But just to keep it simple, so my family, my mom and dad really, when they got together, was the bringing together of two families that had a fair amount of family business background in them. So Grand Rapids Label was a company that was founded by my great-great-uncle. So my great-grandfather's brother actually founded the business, and it passed down, and my dad ran that business when I was growing up. Cascade Engineering, or Paragon, I'll go to Paragon next, and Paragon was a company that was bought by my grandfather about 70 years ago. It's actually now run by my brother.
Was that on your mother's side?
That
then?
was on my mother's side.
Okay.
So on my father's side, his sister married Jim Crosby, which is Crosby and Henry Insurance. And so my dad has 2 siblings, and so the 3 of them are owners within Grand Rapids Label,
Okay.
if this is making sense so far.
I need a diagram.
Yes. So then on my mom's side of the family, it's my mom and her brother was Fred Keller,
Okay.
who founded Cascade Engineering.
Okay.
So that's a family business. So that's where Cascade Engineering comes in. Now, my family has no real correlation with Cascade Engineering, but yet together, the Keller family and the Muir family owns Paragon Die.
Okay.
And the Allens and the Crosbys and the Muirs, the 3 families, then own Grand Rapids Label. Those 3 families don't have any sort of affiliation with Paragon or Cascade,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
That does make sense. It does make sense. So as you're growing up, you're 22 years old, you're graduating from college. How did you make a decision where to go? What were some of those discussions, and how did you decide what path to take?
Well, the interesting perspective, it really is, the first decision really isn't which company you're going to go to work for, are you going to go work for a family business to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the more important one, as it was for me, because I think it was not a matter of if I'm going to go into business. Now, I always kind of knew growing up. I think it goes back to that growing up time, because I saw all the male role models in my life all ran family businesses for the most part. I saw business differently. I saw business as being able to, work together with family. So I always was intrigued by what I saw. So that's really what made the decision for me to want to go into business in the first place, if that makes sense.
When did you make that decision? At what age did you decide to come back and work for a family business?
Well, I started working for the business right out of college.
Okay.
A little bit based upon the timing in terms of when I graduated from college. In the early 90s, it was not a great time to graduate from college, and there wasn't a lot of jobs available.
I remember that well.
So it was one of those things that, I tried to look at other areas, and nothing just seemed to fit. And it was at that point that I came back. And actually, I came back on a very short stint. I was going to work at the company for 2-3 years, get some experience, and go on from there and, kind of do something else. We still feel, I think, in the family, it's important to cut your teeth at other organizations and spend time elsewhere. But part of what happened is I came into the business, into a training program, and worked on different areas. It really allowed us to be able to kind of go forward that it made sense for me to stay within the business at that point.
Can you tell us a little bit about your progress through the company, where you started when you first came
Sure.
in and how you worked your way up?
Sure. So I started, it was a management training program. I actually started, one of my cousins and I started together. So we came into the business and we did a little bit of everything at that point. For me, it was usually 2 to 3 months at a time, spent some time in the estimating area and the customer service and the accounting, manufacturing, operations, in the lab. And so working on special projects, we're very much into the lean stuff now, but I was doing a lot of those projects. We didn't really call it lean or the Kaizen events that we do now, but we were doing a number of those types of things, looking at different areas, looking at ways to streamline it, making recommendations, all the while trying to figure out kind of the pros and cons and what the strengths are that we had within the industry. So from there, as I said, after 3 years, I then got into the sales area for the company. So I spent a little bit of, one of my stints was in the sales arena. So I spent some time in sales and actually moved down. My wife and I, when we first got married, moved down to Atlanta and lived down there for 6 years, selling for the business for Grand Rapids Label. And so that was an important part for me. And it really became that time that I could be away from the business, which was really important to do, to be able to kind of, cut my teeth and be able to have the success that I was able to have down there while selling, before ultimately moving back to Grand Rapids and then getting onto the management ladder. From there, it got into some marketing, ultimately sales management area, overseeing kind of some accounts that I had when I was down in Atlanta, the people that had taken my place, and then moving into operations. And then it was a rather quick transition from operations into the ultimate leadership of the organization when my father passed away back in 2008.
So I know you have college-age children. Right? You have one, I believe, in college.
I do.
And one on the way.
One almost there, yep.
And then one who's a freshman?
Freshman in high school, yep. So
Okay.
senior in high school and a freshman in high school.
So what kind of things are you doing to groom them for the family business? What resources are you using? What conversations are you having? How are you preparing them for making these decisions?
So we've been very conscious in terms of how we work with our family. And it's not just my family. It becomes the other two families in the business, the two ownership families, the Allen family and the Crosby family. So as we work with that fifth generation, there's 3 of us that work in the business now. And so I have 2 cousins that I'm working with. It just happens to be that one from each family is involved in the business. But our perspective is that we're running the business for the 5th generation. We're not looking to capitalize on it and sell it and get rid of it. We're looking to work towards the next generation. We've had to become very conscious about how we bring up the next generation. So as we look at the 5th generation, there's 15 members of the 5th generation. It really becomes the question as we're starting to bring that next generation up. So it works with my kids, but it also works with the others that are not my kids, in terms of we want to make sure that they want to come to the business. So from that perspective, it's not a matter of, okay, you have to work in the business or you have to come work for the business. What's interesting is I have a son and 2 daughters, and my son is the oldest, and I get the question a lot about, oh, so is your son coming into the business, or what's he going to do? And I say, I don't know if he's going to come into the business. Right now, he's wanting to go into the medical field, and he wants to be a nurse. And the question I always get, which is funny to me, is, oh, are you okay with that, with him not going in the family business? And I look at him and I say, well, I have 2 daughters, too. So it doesn't have to be that my son is the one coming into the business.
2 other potential leaders.
I have 2 other potential leaders. And in fact, we have 15 potential leaders in the next generation.
Right.
So our perspective is we want to make sure that we work with them so that they are interested in the business. So we get together twice a year. We talk with the next generation about the business. We've learned a lot over the years from the Family Business Alliance. By listening and attending the events, it's been really helpful for us to be able to understand what are the best practices within the family. So that's why we do the 2 meetings a year. We actually, one of the things that we do is with all the financials and all the board minutes and whatnot, we actually have the spouses that come into the family are included on that distribution. So it's not a matter of saying we're trying to keep it secretive from the spouses, because if in the case of my kids, they're spending more time with my wife than they are with me. And so if she has a better understanding of the business and a better perspective of the business, she's going to speak more favorably of the business as a positive thing. If Dad does have to travel, if Dad is working late, they don't look at the family business as this negative and say, oh, it just keeps Dad away from the family, so that my wife, Kathy, has a really good understanding of what's going on. And we do that, like I said, with all the spouses coming into the business from all the shareholders. So that's one of the things that we do there.
So you do family council meetings then with all of the interested persons?
They are included in our board, and they're welcome to attend our board meetings if they want. And they get the board packet, which has all the information. So then twice a year, we're getting together as a large group, those that can, once at Christmas and once around our July board meeting, to be able to talk about the business, but also just to talk and be together as a family. Because one of the things we found, for us all growing up together, for my the cousin generation, we've had some things that have pared down the ownership over the years, so we truly are in a cousin generation. We all grew up with a family cottage out on Lake Michigan together. So we all know each other very well. But yet what we found out of the 15 of the next generation, and the ages are close to 30 down to 3. So it's a wide range of ages, a wide range of locations, anywhere from California to New York in terms of where they're located. And we found out that because we knew each other, but they didn't really know each other. So when we first got together back in 2012, one of the first things that we realized was they have no idea who these other kids are that are here, even though they're related to them. And they all have the common business that they're all
and they
a part
may be
of.
running the business together
And they may be running the business together in the future, but for now they just don't know where, they don't know each other. So we realized the first thing we had to do is actually get them to know each other. So family gatherings in the summer, family gatherings at Christmas for those that can make it. And it's been really helpful to help get them to at least know who each other is. Then we also have a plan that says if they want to work in the business, they can come work in the business when they're old enough. But we also have a perspective, too, that when they do come work in the business, they're going to do the grungiest, crappiest job we can find for them. Now, some people think that's because I had the crappiest job or one of the crappiest jobs at the time.
My husband did too. So.
Yeah, I think it's always that way.
Yes.
It is. But that's by design too. We want them because it's interesting. We have an employee who's been with us for over 50 years, and he works out in the plant. He remembers when I was back there getting dirty and grungy and everything else. So he looks at it and he'll still remember that and still remind me of that. And he knows that I'm willing to get dirty, so it makes it completely different when I'm asking him to do something or others to do something.
Right.
So there's that history with the long-term employees to see that. So it is by design. And it's kind of funny, there's always these different perspectives and different things that'll happen. And of course there's always the stories when I get when our plant foreman will come up to me and it's like, so, your son? And I'm like, oh no, what happened this time? Or something like that.
Right.
You get those stories, which are great. I think that's the good perspective to have those things happen. So we realized back when we made this conscious effort that we need to get them to know each other. We started including the spouses in the information so they know what's going on with the business, and so there's a better understanding there. We've done our board of directors back in 2007 when I was starting to take over. One of the things we did is we changed our board of directors. We went from it was my dad and his sisters and spouses. That was the board. Great, because of the other family business involvement, there was a lot of great insights on the board, but we've also brought in outside directors. And that's been a real big plus for us as well. So we're, like I said, taking a lot of things we've learned from the FBA and over the years to heart and have really made a big difference for us as an organization.
Well, I love that. And it's really clear that the values are important to you. The work ethic is important to you.
Yep.
Getting rid of any entitlement that you sort of are
Yep.
going to earn your keep if you're coming back. So I want to talk a little bit about the FBA, and thank you for the plug.
Mm-hmm.
So you just stepped down as our chair. We were
I
very
did.
fortunate to have you for 6 years, which was wonderful. Can you tell us a little bit about why you got involved with the board of FBA and kind of some of your fondest things that have happened over the last couple of years, some changes that have taken place?
Sure. It really was an easy decision back when I was asked to join the board. I grew up in a family that has been involved in the community in various ways in the previous generation, so it was always an example for us to be able to want to give back. We always view ourselves as being very fortunate for what we do have and to be able to give back, and this was a natural for me to be able to do that. I'm very passionate about family businesses. I think that family businesses are very critical to our kind of the economy and what we do. And there's so much more that we do. And I go into stories where I know people that have sold their business, and the experiences and the way that employees are treated after the fact just aren't the same as the way they were beforehand. So I think it's an important part of it, and we take that to heart at the company, and we try to treat people very well. Mm-hmm. And provide that family atmosphere. And when they come in, I always say, welcome to the family, because they are becoming part of the family. So I think there's that, to me, it's a passion about family businesses of all the positives that they can do. So that was why I wanted to get involved when I was first asked to be on the board. And then again, kind of the next step of stepping into the role. Chair, I think it was a fun ride. It was great to be able to do, and so I really enjoyed it. To me, it's pretty cool to be able to see, and having seen over the years, the people that come to the events. And what I always love is when you can invite someone to an event for the first time, and they come and you realize that we try to do things well, but we don't do things perfect. Nobody does. So when you invite somebody to join you and they come to the meeting and they walk away, they're just so enthused and so charged. It's really cool to see. So that's something I've really enjoyed as a board member, but also just as a member of the FBA.
Thank you so much for joining us today
You're
and
welcome.
sharing your experiences. I learned a couple new things that I didn't know about, and very interesting history. I was interested when you talked about the employees being family, because you mentioned somebody who's been there for 50 years.
Right.
And I think that that's really exciting that you're in the 5th generation, which statistically is very rare. I think,
Very
what do they
rare,
say,
yep.
about 3 or 4% something?
Yeah, it's like 1% make it to the 4th generation.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. We have a thing in our business, because they always talk about there's the life cycle of the family business. The first generation, they found the business, and the second generation comes in and they really grow the business. And there does become this entitlement that I think happens in some respects in the 3rd generation. So the 3rd generation tends to run into the ground. Our joke with the 3rd generation is that in the 4th generation, we blame the 3rd generation for what they did. But the good part for us is our 3rd generation was very successful in what they did.
Good.
And allows us to be able to build upon it. I think that's part of, the family is really what's kept us together for all this time.
Well, and it's a testament to the values of your family. It's a testament to what you find important, and getting the cousins to know each other and respecting the people who have been through. And I think that shows in the success of your company. So,
well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun. It's a challenge. And as we also talk about in regards to family, it's, like family, you don't always get along all the time. And there's times that you don't necessarily agree on everything, and that's okay. But that's part of how we try to operate as a company and as a business and as a family. So that's what makes it important. So it's fun. We enjoy it, and the FBA has been a great organization too. So
wonderful. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It was
Thank you.
fun talking with you.